We respectfully acknowledge that we are in the homelands of the Coast Salish people who have been here since time immemorial and still live here today. We pay respect to the first peoples who gathered here, to elders past and present, and to all Indigenous people. We thank the Coast Salish people for their generations of stewardship over our natural resources. My name is Sean again. I'm New Chanoth, and my people are from Vancouver Island in Canada, but I reside here in Seattle with my two boys.
Halito, Sahochipa Miriam. Hello, my name is Miriam, Choctaw Sia, Cherokee Sia, Sackfox Sia, Ashkenazi Sia, African American Sia. So my family descended from Choctaw, Cherokee, Sac and Fox, African American, Ashkenazi peoples. And I reside here in Seattle with my two kiddos, Nita and Neshoba. Hey na no way, hey na no way. Hey na no way, hey na. Hey na no way, hey na no way. Hey na no way, hey na. Mothers, daughters, and our grandma. Hey na no way, hey na. Sisters, aunties, and our aunties. No, and our sorry. Way, let's pause for a second. We missed this line. Apologies. We don't sing nearly as much as we used to because of COVID. Yeah, we're getting a little nervous. Sisters, aunts, nieces, and our aunties. Hey na no way, hey na. Hey na no way, hey na no way. Hey na no way, hey na. Hey na no way, hey na. Na no way, hey na no way. Hey na no way, hey na. Hey na no way, hey na no way. Hey na no way, hey na.
All right. Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Greetings to you wherever you may be. My name is Rosette Royale, and I'm a writer and a storyteller here in Seattle, and I'm also the managing editor of the South Seattle Emerald. So to increase the accessibility of this program, we encourage speakers to provide a brief verbal, visual description of themselves and their surroundings. I'll demonstrate. My pronouns are he, she, they. I'm Black. I have gold glasses. My dreads are braided into two ponytails, and I'm wearing a blue overshirt with some gold designs on it and a pink undershirt, and I've got on pink boots. All right. And I am delighted to welcome you all here to our program this evening, Parenting While Queer. Two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, plus parents and allies take action. So thank you for joining us in person and also virtually. I also want to mention that Jeannie Yandel, KUOW Special Projects Editor and Creator and co-host of the podcast Battle Tactics for Your Sexist Workplace, originally planned to moderate this panel, but she had an emergency and was pulled away. So I'm going to do my best to fill in. Now, I am so thrilled to introduce this panel and to have a great conversation with them all. But before we did that, I just want to acknowledge people for sharing their thoughts earlier, which you had seen up on the screen. And so maybe we'll have more opportunities to share your thoughts. And when you do, we'll make sure we display them and you'll see them again at the end of the night. So the Discovery Center is excited to host public programs to complement its current exhibition, Designing Motherhood, Things That Make and Break Our Births. This exhibition invites us to consider why and how designs that facilitate reproductive health have been developed. It also asks us to think about the social, economic, and political implications of these designs. Birth and the culture that surrounds it affect every living person. These are not just women's issues, these are human issues, and they matter to us all. The curator of exhibitions at the Discovery Center, Sarah Bloom, says, in this exhibition, we really try to talk about motherhood being myriad. It's really all acts of labor and care. Whether you have children, you have siblings, whether you are child-free, we are all part of this larger system of love and care of children and families. For this program, captioning services are provided by Mirabai Knight, and we will also have American Sign Language or ASL interpretation. And now for our panelists. Great. Sitting right here on my left is Kristin Leong. Kristin is the founder of the Family Court Report and an award-winning multimedia producer. She is a 2023 Creative Capital Awardee, Air New Voices Scholar, International TED-Ed Innovative Educator, and Seattle Mayor's Arts Award nominee. She was previously with KUOW Public Radio and is currently working on a hybrid memoir exploring America's broken family court system. Learn more and subscribe to her newsletter for misfits and unlikely optimists at rockpaperradio.com. Love that name. Kristin's originally from Honolulu, and she now lives here in Seattle with her wife, son, and rescue pup, Radley. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Jess T. Dugan. Jess is an artist whose work explores identity through photography, video, and writing. Jess's work is regularly exhibited internationally, is in permanent collections of over 50 museums. Their monographs include Look at Me Like You Love Me, To Survive on This Shore, photographs and interviews with transgender and gender nonconforming, older adults, and Every Breath We Drew. They are the recipient of a Pollock Krasner Foundation grant, an ICP Infinity Award, and were selected by the Obama White House as an LGBT Artist Champion of Change. Hello, Jess.
Hello, thank you.
Yes. And here we go with Ari Robbins Greene. Ari is an attorney, activist, healthcare advocate, and an advisor to our exhibit, Designing Motherhood, Things That Make and Break Our Birth. Ari was the gestational dad to their oldest child in 2020 and has since become a dad of 3. Ari has firsthand experience navigating queer, trans, reproductive health care, and Ari works to bring visibility for birthing dads. Howdy, Ari.
Hello. Thank you for the lovely introduction.
And last, but this is certainly by no means least, we have Jessi Allen-Garibaldi. Jessi is a two-spirit, twin spirit, Afro-Indigenous, Blackfoot, first-time parent of a 1.5-year-old. They have been married to their wife for 7 years and have been a youth, family, and community educator for 10 years. They obtained a master's degree in health education with a concentration in community health from the University of New Mexico, and they've worked with youth and families experiencing homelessness, immigrant and refugee communities, and in early childhood development with babies and young children. They currently work at the Native Family Learning Lodge, serving Indigenous families, providing free, Indigenous-centered child care for children from newborns to 5-year-olds. Hi, Jessi.
Okay. Hello.
Hello. All right. So just a reminder to audience members in person and online, this is a space where hate speech and harmful communications is not tolerated, will not be tolerated. So please refer to our standards of respect posted around the Discovery Center, and we will put a link in the chat. Non-compliance can result in the removal of any person from the Discovery Center who disregards this commitment. Well said. Thank you. It's so great to have children here, right? To have the reality of kids here while we're having this conversation about parenting while queer. All right, so let's get started by having each of our panelists say a little bit about their work. And if you can, maybe have a short visual description as well.
Sure.
All right, how about we start with you?
Great. I'm Kristin Leong. I am a half white, half Chinese woman. I'm wearing a very bright orange blazer and not pink shoes, but animal print flats today. And my current work is focused on writing about our family court system.
Fantastic. Jess.
Hello, everyone. My name's Jessi Dugan. My pronouns are they, them. I also love having children here. It's very sweet. A visual description. I am white. I have short, dark hair. I'm wearing dark glasses. I am also wearing bright orange pants and a blue shirt with stars and a gray jacket and black shoes that are not as flashy as rosettes. I work as an artist and I work primarily with photography, but I also work in video and writing. And my work looks at identity, and in particular, I look at a lot around gender and sexuality. And I have a current body of work photographing my family, which includes my 5-year-old daughter, Eleanor.
Great. Ari.
My name is Ari Robbins Greene. It's really great to be here with these wonderful panelists. So first I describe myself. Okay. So I'm a white, Ashkenazi, Jewish, trans, queer guy who most people think is just like a gay dude, and which is fine. And I have a hat on because I have little hair on the top, which is fine too. And you know, a big fluffy beard, and jeans and my floral dress shirt, which, you know, as a man, I love wearing floral. I never felt like I could wear floral when I identified as a woman. So I feel very empowered and very affirmed in my floral. And that's how I'm feeling. And that's what I'm wearing. And my kiddo, my oldest kid, would like totally freak out about your pink boots and wears pink, purple head to toe every day only. Yeah. And my work. So currently, my current work is I'm an attorney, and I do class actions for workers who experience wage theft. Work that may not immediately seem connected for some people to parenting, but I promise you it most certainly is. Parents work, and parents need support at work to take care of their children. So I find it's very, very connected. In the past, I've done policy work. Most significantly, I worked on a bill called the Gender Affirming Treatment Act that is now the law in Washington State, which prohibits discrimination in healthcare against trans folks who are seeking gender affirming care, and insurance companies cannot claim that those treatments are cosmetic in Washington State. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jessi.
Oki ni Sokowax ni Stuanako Jessi. So hello, friends and relatives. My name is Jessi. I am wearing my hair is in locks. I would say it looks like a rope-like texture, but it feels like a sheep's wool. Long ponytail down my back. I'm wearing a bandana. It's red and blue. I have a matching ribbon shirt to go with it. There's a print on the side from my shoulder to my hip with a ribbon, tan pants, and some boots I threw on today. I have been in service of children. That's my whole life's work. And currently I'm working for Native Family Learning Lodge, which is very special and close to my heart because it was created by Native families for Native families. So we provide free childcare service for our kids that is culturally centered around indigenous cultures and traditions. I am a Native African American, Afro-Indigenous, Black Indian, and I identify as that. I am a two-spirit. It's commonly called twin spirit in the indigenous culture, but my elder taught me it was twin spirit, and more specifically, it's called a wingtang, and it's just another gender, not male or female or anything in between, but just kind of on the spectrum. So yeah. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy you're all here. All right, so we have some questions, but really this might kind of turn into some sort of dialogue where we're all just like talking to each other about what happens. But all right, so we're going to see where we go. All right. So, people become parents in all kinds of ways, right? Regardless of your orientation, everyone has a journey. So I would love to hear about your journeys to parenthood. And I'm going to mix up the order of things. And so I'm going to start with Ari.
Well, thank you. So awesome question. I became a parent 3 different times. And I became a parent in I consider 3 different ways, a different way each time. For my first kid, I gave birth to my first kid in 2020. I got pregnant by laying on my friend's bathroom floor and doing self-insemination with like a syringe. And that was my first pregnancy. That's my first kiddo. Definitely being a new parent in the pandemic here was really, really challenging. But also I feel like something that connects me and bonds me to other parents who are newer parents in this in the COVID world. And then my second kiddo, my partner gave birth to my second kid. They have the same genetic other component from the same person. And so I'm not genetically related to that child. And then my most recent child is now 6 weeks old, just born. And my wife gave birth to that child. And that child I did IVF, and I had my eggs harvested, and we created an embryo also with the same other component, genetic component, as my prior 2 children. And my wife gave birth to that child that was an embryo that was created from my egg, which was, especially powerful and significant. Each one of my children really have been. The way that they came to this world was powerful and significant. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that, because so often people just look at you and they make an assumption about how your family came to be. And, so many people, that's just, the assumption is just not true. And I love and am proud of sort of my family story and how all my children came to be in this world. So thank you.
That's beautiful. All right, Jessi, how about you? Your pathway to parenthood. Maybe it was pathways.
Oh, okay. Thank you. It was a long journey for us. We, when I first got together with my partner, now wife, we knew that we wanted to have kids, so we started saving right away. We ended up getting pregnant after, it took a little bit of time. And it took a little bit of time to find the right donor and to navigate the situation, because being in a same-sex relationship and trying to have a kid, it's not like an intimate process. There's a lot of moving pieces involved. And so once we figured that out, we ended up getting pregnant with our first child May of 2021, and she came February 2022. And we are a 2-womb relationship, and so for our next child, I'm also planning on carrying. So I'm the non-gestational parent to our first child, but plan on carrying our second child.
Okay, Kristin.
I had my son as a single mom. He's now 15 and a half years old. And my son and I were very, very lucky to meet the woman who is now my wife when he was barely 7 years old. And so we like to think we were married about 4 years ago. And so we would like to think that like my son and I, we got to have Carrie join our little family. And so it's been a wonderful ride being a single parent for much of my son's babyhood and toddlerhood and younger years, and then being able to experience co-parenting with my wife for the sort of second half of his life. So.
And Jess.
I love hearing these stories. Thank you, everyone. I was reflecting on sort of the origins of wanting to be a parent, and I was a very masculine presenting child. So I did not grow up thinking I wanted to have kids, and no one in my orbit assumed I would have kids. I feel like I didn't receive these typical messages around becoming a mother, becoming a parent. And then at some point in my early 20s, I realized I was open to the idea and somewhat interested. And then I met my partner, Vanessa, when I was 26 and she was 34. And so it kind of fast tracked and she really wanted to carry. So it fast tracked that process. And as soon as we had reliable health insurance, we started the process, and we had a kind of long process. We originally had a known donor and got fairly far down that path. And then that changed, and we found an anonymous donor and began that process. I feel like it's important to share, because it's not often talked about, but we also had experience of miscarriage along our journey. And then originally Eleanor was born in 2018. So she and I are not biologically related.
All right, so there could be so many assumptions about parenthood. And here we are talking about being queer parents. I wonder what kind of assumptions you may have had to deal with in your journey to parenthood and even now as a parent. So how about we start with Jess?
That's a great question. Ari and I were kind of getting into some of this before the panel, and I was like, let me not ask you all my questions before the panel. But, I think I had some anxiety interfacing with the medical system as a queer person and seeking fertility treatment and going through that process, which I think everyone has a journey around that. And me being, visibly queer and masculine presenting, I had some worries about that. Luckily, we found a supportive team. I think what I'm thinking about more now is my role as a parent who identifies as non-binary. I mean, one of the things I had to figure out was what my daughter was going to call me, and none of the existing names felt appropriate. So we came up with Pari, which is P-A-R-I, which is short for parent. And my kiddo just started kindergarten, so I'm in this phase of like intensely explaining this to people. I think for me, one thing that I love about being a queer parent is I get to define everything, but it is this kind of constant, I'm finding I'm constantly explaining in an effort to be one step ahead of my daughter so that she doesn't have to explain that for me.
Do you mean explaining to your daughter or explaining to others?
No, explaining to others, like on her behalf. Yeah.
All right, Ari, Jess said you two were having a little conversation about it earlier, and you talked about three different pathways to parenthood, 3 different experiences of it. So like, what were some of the assumptions that you experienced along the way? We've had some conversations, so you've mentioned some of this to me before.
Yeah, I think, we're using the word assumption, and that definitely fits. But the way I think about it is like dominant culture has this sort of default for a lot of types of identities and a lot of experiences. There's sort of one that's thought about, and maybe some nuance to the one, but to not be thought of as a default parent is that like really well describes my experience. Like that as a queer person, as a trans person, I am not considered in the default category. I'm sort of like a special situation. If I'm a parent, it's like kind of an extra special situation. It's like, it's not actually, it's like just my body did it for like, that's how I want to be a parent. And I did it with the body, and there it is. Like, that's my baby. I'm a parent. Like a lot of people become parents through, like we're saying, through all different means, all different times in their lives, in all different ways. And there's no default. The default is that everybody's doing it a little bit differently. And a lot of the assumptions that I grapple with and face and have faced along the way are just about me being invisible and my parent experience being invisible, and people not seeing me as a potential gestational parent. So, I go into spaces for parents, spaces for gestating parents, commonly in our culture referred to as mothers and moms and women. And I'm not considered among them. And their brain won't allow me to, immediately be in their cohort. And that's alienating, because I feel so, how did you say it about being like an unlikely
optimist.
I'm an unlikely optimist. And so it is really hard, because I forgive everyone for not knowing that I did this, that they did, that we did this, or that and it's like that part of, my experience just isn't on the surface. And I want to bring it to the surface. And at the same time, it's like this negotiation about safety, right? And that's too bad too. But that's part of what I think we were talking about a little bit, and sort of just the assumptions that have impacted me along my journey, being a newer parent.
Ari, can I add a question onto that too? Do you think so? Your children are all really young. You have three under 4.
3 under 3.5.
Yeah, you have a full house. So you're thinking about like how like the public is sort of reflecting on what kind of parent they think you could be, or so you guys, do your kids, do you think they have a sense of that they came into the world differently?
They don't know it's different. I'm redefining their default. I'm filling in their blanks in our own narrative. And that's the way that we have any power to reclaim, I think, really, is like we get to redo, we get to remap, and probably we're doing some things wrong, but hopefully we're filling in the right messages. And my kids will tell you straight up, like, I was in data, that this kiddo was in mama, and then that kiddo is, my kids know what an embryo is. I mean, there's great resources out there. It's like yeah.
All right, great question, Kristin. So here's one. He's talking about sort of this default narrative. And so what assumptions and default narrative did you experience, like raising a young one and then being a single mom for a while?
Yeah, well, I was thinking more actually of our present day life. So my wife is much more masculine presenting, and I have long hair. I like pointy shoes. I think we were just talking recently about like, what do you think other people don't know about you that only I know about you, right? And I was thinking about how people probably look at us and in our son's little league games, or in our going to curriculum night and those kinds of things. I think people make assumptions about what kind of roles my wife and I play based on our gender presentation. And I think what people would be very surprised to know is she is very much like a traditional mom. Like, she's the one that can do the small talk with the other parents and plan out like the hangs for the kids, and it's just, I think it's interesting in a school environment where our son is older, of course, he's in high school now, but I think in these like suburban areas where he has grown up, we might be the only queer couple, queer parents in the room. And so I think you can see people making sense of us in a way that makes sense to them, that isn't necessarily our truth.
Thank you. All right, Jessi. Assumptions and default narrative. I kind of like this theme. I mean, what's been your experience of either or both of these concepts?
Yeah, I am aware that as I walk through the world, people perceive me as a more like masculine, like body and person. And I feel like they assume that that is the role that I kind of take on. But I feel like in reality with the relationship with my wife is that there are things that need to get done. And so how do we create a balance to get those things done? It's not like you fit into this gender role. So, you know, you're in the kitchen and you're taking care of the kids, or, you know, you take out the trash or anything like that. It's like, these are the things that we need to get done. And that plays a role in every aspect of our life. So whether it's at home or whether it's, you know, in ceremony or in the communities, like what are the things that, you know, need to get done, and what can we do together to achieve it? So it's more like teamwork, you know, kind of being on the same page.
Okay. So now I have some individual questions for folks, right? Jess, start with you. So you're a photographer and you have such a great photo in this exhibit, right? And it's 2 days after I think your child Eleanor was born. And I wonder if you could talk about what it means to have this picture of like queer parents in this exhibit designing motherhood, and like what the meaning of that to you and the feeling of that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Before I answer that, I have to say that what you said really resonates with me, because as the more masculine parent, I do a lot of the like mothering, and it's so fascinating to see all of those dynamics play out and assumptions that other people make. But anyway, yes, I have a photograph of Vanessa and I holding Eleanor when she was 2 days old in the hospital. And my work as a whole really centers around issues of representation. I'm really passionate about creating representations of queer lives and queer experiences, but also doing that from a very subjective point of view. And the other thing I'm really passionate about is the power of personal storytelling. So a lot of my photographs and my work come from my own life and experience, and they always have. And I had a long-term project photographing my family before Eleanor was born. And then when she was born, I started making pictures of her because it just felt so natural. Like, this is what I'm going through. This is my life. And I very quickly realized just how few representations of queer families there are, and especially queer parenting, especially butch parenting or transmasculine parenting. And I realized very quickly that a lot of people had literally never seen a picture of someone who looks like me holding a baby or pushing a stroller or whatever it may be. So I've really doubled down on being passionate about telling those stories. Interestingly, I made that picture in the hospital. I actually didn't take my camera at all because I chose to be present as a parent and not as a photographer, which is an ongoing dilemma. But then, of course, I realized, I don't know how it was for everyone else, but I suddenly had this massive amount of time in the hospital where where Eleanor was sleeping. And so I asked someone to bring me my camera, and I made that portrait. And I originally intended to just photograph Vanessa. And after I made that picture, she said, you should make one too. And so we made this diptych of us holding Eleanor. And at least in my own practice and in exhibitions like that, I feel like it's becoming a kind of significant photograph in that there just aren't many like it. And another thing I talked about with the exhibition curator was just simply depicting a representation of a C-section and immediately post-birth and what that moment looks like. And, our first night in the hospital was very traumatic. We had a homophobic nurse who denied bringing medication, and neither of us slept. So that photograph was made 48 hours after having slept. So I wanted to capture the beautiful parts, but also just the reality of that experience.
Right. So you talk about capturing the reality of experience, and Ari had some experience with reality television. And Ari was on My Pregnant Husband when you were pregnant. So what was that experience like to do that show? And then when you tell this story, I have something to add, but you go ahead.
Well, it was totally wild. But I will say that, I'm a huge reality TV fan, so that helps going into it. When I started out my pregnancy journey, wanting to get pregnant as a dude, I was struck, and I don't know why I was struck, but there was not any trans guys out there getting pregnant and like talking about it on the internet. And I had a lot of like pretty simple questions that a lot of healthcare providers, really good ones, didn't feel comfortable answering because there just like wasn't studies and information and data about like how I should go about this process, which to me was something I personally always wanted to do and just kind of never thought anything otherwise. And I knew that, you know, I still had my uterus and I had been on hormones for a while, but nothing had happened to my uterus. It was still there. So I didn't know what to do next, kind of like, well, here I am, like I've got one, like it's here. I don't know what if it works. I want to try it out. And just nowhere to go. It just felt like then there was just silence and so much information about how to get pregnant from a perspective of like a non-trans person. And I just felt like I needed to document my experience of learning about how to do this as a trans person, just me, you know, just my experience, because there was just such little representation, little information out there. So for me, it was really about like, I need to get this information just out while I'm learning it. And I made a couple of YouTube videos with my friend and put them online, and they got like, you know, quite a bit of traction. I didn't go viral, but you know, people were watching them, and that felt really, really good to just be there with like my queer community, my expansive queer community. And then I got initially approached by Courtney Cox. And I'll say Friends, in my personal opinion, doesn't stand up. Like, I'll give you that. Today, it doesn't stand up. I'm not one of those. But Courtney Cox was my first childhood crush. So Courtney Cox approached me and asked me to be involved with some sort of like special that would only go on Facebook. It was like very bizarre. And it was 10 minutes long, but you had to film it yourself. And I was like, absolutely, I'll do whatever you want. Can Courtney Cox come to my house? And tried to film it myself. And that turned out to be way harder than I thought. So I stopped. Then I was approached by somebody who was like in production for that show, but like also on a different show, who worked with TLC, and was like, oh, we have this other family. They were on Say Yes to the Dress. They're like, the guy is trans, and there's a woman in the relationship too who's also trans, and they are having a baby, and they want to like, they're like activists, like this is their jam, and they want this show, but they need another couple for the show. And I was like, well, I'll definitely be your other couple. Like, that sounds fantastic. Sign me up. And it was just really wild. I mean, they came to my house and, you know, watched what I did. They were fascinated with the milk. Like, that was really weird to me, actually, was how much time they spent filming because we got donated breast milk. And I think as little as people know about trans bodies and queer people and making babies and all this stuff, they know even less about breast milk, like really, and like, or like formula, or like how anybody feeds babies. They were just, the crew was fascinated. They were like, you're getting breast milk, but it's not in your boob. Like, what? Like, this is amazing. I was like, actually, people have been doing this since we've existed. Like, this is a thing that exists in a lot of cultures and like really should be much more present in our dominant culture. Again, the default is to sanitize and keep that kind of stuff right away from everybody. So that was actually really striking, was how much, you know, while I was going through this, I was like, oh, I want to make sure everybody knows about my like unique special experience, so that for other trans people, like they can maybe feel a little less scared, or they're like, they know who to reach out to or something like that. But then really it was like, people just don't know anything about birth or reproductive health at all. It doesn't matter if you're trans or not. It's like, they just really, all this stuff is a real mystery. And probably because of, you know, all sorts of reasons, sexism and erasing these cultural experiences that people have passed on for generations and generations, and getting too far away from them. But yeah, so the whole experience was totally wild, and I'm really glad I did it, even though it was like really hard to have people up in my personal space while I was going through that challenging but beautiful time.
Thank you.
Mm.
I just want to say that when I first learned about Ari, and I was like, oh, I should do a little research. And then I found this video about Ari on my pregnant husband. And then I discovered that Ari's OBGYN is my landlord.
She's incredible.
Yeah, she's pretty great. She's pretty great. So that was really a great discovery. So
I love that. I
connection.
love that too.
Okay. So now, Jessi, we're talking about representation and sort of what people think, and these assumptions. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what your experience is of being a parent who identifies as two-spirit, twin-spirit Winkte. Like, what does that mean for you and to you?
I feel like representation is key. I've worked in Seattle public schools, and kids, they look up to people who look like them. And I feel like my existence in the world is something that is valuable. And also, having a young child and kind of being out in the community needs to be protected as well. I had this experience. Okay, it's kind of these two experiences. I was at the park, so it was like me and my wife and the baby were at the park, and my wife had noticed this. I usually, when I'm out if it's not like my hoop or my tayosh, but if it's, I'm not like with my people, I kind of just don't notice kind of like what's going on like around me. So anyway, I'm at the park with the baby, and my wife notices that there's this family, and the male presenting parent, and they had a little kid with them, and the male presenting parent was kind of like, oh, don't play with them, or something to that effect. And as I was walking to the car, it just made me think of like, I realize as, being a Black person, a Black Indigenous person, like I'm going to have certain conversations with, my daughter being a brown Black child. But I didn't realize until that moment, it's like, oh, I'm eventually going to have these conversations about like us being a same-sex family and kind of what that means. It didn't really click with me. And so that happened like a couple months ago. And then recently, like 2 weeks ago, I was at the park, and it's just me and the baby, and I was just chopping it up with another parent who had a daughter. And so my daughter really likes older kids. Like she just looks up to them. They're just amazing. So her and this little kid they're just having just a great time. Like my daughter's in the bucket seat, the little girl's pushing her, they're like climbing things together and having fun, and I'm talking it up with the parent. But I realized that subconsciously I intentionally did not like mention like my wife or mommy or something like that, because I had this moment of just like, I would hate to say something to kind of like out my child, and then she gets ripped away, from the situation. And, my wife has read that at 18 months old, they start feeling like guilt and shame and stuff, like going in the corner and like going to the bathroom, or something like that. And so for me, it's just kind of reflecting on these situations. And, I'm definitely the newest parent. Y'all have way more experience than me. But just realizing that there's other conversations other than kind of like race that I'm going to have to eventually talk to my daughter about. So yeah, that's kind of, been my experience.
All right. Thank you. So we just have a few more moments. I don't know if there's anyone out here who might have a question. We're going to get a microphone to you. Hold on one second. Yeah, exactly. There we go.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, first expression, I've never heard the expression gestational parent. I speak a bunch of languages, it's my fault. Love it for you in particular. I love that. I love that for me because I wasn't, but I just love that expression. I wanted to share as a queer part of a queer couple with a kid, the one that's running around. There are other stories out there that are shiny and happy, and I seem to keep coming across them. So the parent thing of telling kids, I've had the park thing where a kid comes up to you and is like, oh, so who are you? And I'm like, well, that's her mommy and I'm her mama. And she's like, oh my gosh, she has two moms. That's amazing. So that will happen too, is what I wanted to share. And I'm just really glad that I got to listen to all of you today. It's really interesting stuff.
Thank you. That was great. I think we may have a question from virtual world. Yes, fantastic.
Someone wanted to hear a little bit from Kristin about the family report and the work that you're doing.
Oh, sure. The family court report. So I was actually thinking, Jessi, I was hearing that moment. I was feeling that moment of like, we all might be comfortable in our journeys and have come to where we are as adults to have children and to bring them into our queer families. But then we have kids, and then there's like this other layer of not going back into the closet, but like, how do I protect my child? And if that means I have to step back a little, like we'll do anything for our kids. Anyone would do anything for their child, right? And like, I think we've all had those moments of being like, do I need to hide for a moment to give my child this play date, give my child this interaction, right? And I was thinking about that in terms of family court. You know, when my son was little, it's a long story, but I came out twice. I came out at 19, and then I went back in the closet and then had a baby and thought, what this child doesn't need. This child has a single mom who's a bartender by night and a grad student by day. What this child doesn't also need is a gay parent, right? His life is going to, and you bring up the intersection of race and gender identity and sexual orientation. My family is mixed race. Like, I'm like, he has a lot that he's going to have to understand about our family. I don't want to put that on him too. And I was like, what difference does it make? I'm single anyways. People don't need to know. In family court, and much of the book is hopes to sort of shed light on how powerful it is to just love our children openly as our full selves. And I remember feeling in court that I had to hide who I was just to get a fair shot right in front of these judges. And back then when my son was little, I was much more in a different place on that Kinsey scale, right? I was much more sort of gender neutral presenting. And I remember at one point I like couldn't take it anymore, having to like perform this role of like whatever the ideal mother was supposed to be for family court professionals. And I was like, I just can't take it anymore, like doing this costume. And I cut off all my hair again. It was like very college style, although I was well past college. And I was like, it was like coming out of the closet again. And it was like this breath of fresh air to be like, you know what? These judges, this system have to see how I love my son. They have to see the work that I do for this community. And if half of my head being shaved and wearing, pants and a button-up shirt to court is going to affect that, like, I can't care for the child in any other way anymore, except to just be myself out loud. So part of the work that I'm doing with the family court report is looking at all the different ways that the system is really putting mothers and children in danger because of a basic misunderstanding and dismissal of domestic violence, but also looking at how queer families are fighting in court and the obstacles that they're facing because of their gender expression, because of the gender of their spouse, all those kinds of things. So.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Okay, now this parent over here mentioned something about the happy things that will happen. You said the word love. So I wonder if each of you can tell me one thing you love about your child and or children.
I don't know if any of us can just say one.
Well, I know, but I realize, you don't have a lot of time. I mean, I could have said 100, but I figured you could have them, but so whatever you would like to say that you love about your child. How about that?
Okay.
And you spoke first, so take it away.
Oh my goodness, that's a big one. I mean, well, first to the park point, I get this all the time because I get little kids coming up like, are you her dad? Are you her? You know, and I will say that other kids totally get it. Like kids are like, oh, cool. And like run away. It's like the parents that are sometimes challenging. Let's see. What do I love about my kid? I mean, I think she's the most magical being on the planet. And I know we all think that. And so I'm not naive. I don't really think she's like more magical than anyone else. But to me, she's the most magical being on the planet. And I just love like learning who she is and spending time with her. She's 5. So I feel like the personality is like just exploding. And I also love the way parenthood has completely changed me and my relation to the world. So I feel like she's a gift every day, just and also a gift of presence. I've been thinking recently how like a child keeps you in the moment in this really beautiful way.
All right, Kristin.
I was like, my child is the only teenager on this panel. I'm like, I'm gonna check in with all of you in about 10 years. I got, you know what? My kid is genuinely really funny, really funny. My wife and I like to say like we have the best roommate. He's like this giant creature that lives with us. He's like 1,000,000 feet tall, and he like has no idea how like big and muscly he is. He still thinks he's a little kid, but he is genuinely really funny and makes us laugh all the time when he's not making us mad because he is a teenager. Yes.
Okay, Jessi.
I love the light that my child exudes. Like, I love that she is just friendly and literally talks to everyone, you know, walking down like, hi, and people aren't expecting this little person to say, and even if she sees someone across the street, she will project her voice, hi, and if they're walking away, bye. And so I love that about her. Like, I feel like because we had such a long journey, you know, having a child, I spent a lot of time thinking about kind of like what kind of parent that I wanted to be, and just the intentionality behind you are born exactly how you are supposed to be. And so I want to be intentional about like nurturing that and not stifling it with, you know, my perceptions of things. And so she was born this light, and my hope or my prayer for her, like when she does become a teenager, that she still, you know, exudes this light to the world, because it's beautiful.
Sounds beautiful. Ari.
Having seen your child, I can concur. That's all correct. Yeah. You know, I personally struggle a lot, and I don't know if this is as a queer person or maybe just as a person like in this world, with feeling disconnected and wanting more connection and wanting to be in more like closer, tighter community all the time, and feeling like so like pulled away from community all the time by our circumstances, and you know, trying to just the grind, you know, like trying to survive. And my kids, because there's so many of them, they have what my wife calls is a kid culture, and it is just so natural how they connect with each other and how they naturally want to be in community together and like with other children, like this friendliness that like even when they're shy, they're curious and they want to be close, and they're just like they're comfortable, you know, being in community in this way that I feel like I've been unfortunately disconnected from and like so desperately want to get back to. And so I think that's like because I have 3, I have to say one thing about all 3 of them. It's kind of not fair. So like if I have to say one about all 3 of them, that's what they all 3 together really exemplify that I love.
I want to thank Jessi, Ari, Jess, Kristin for just being so open about your experiences and being willing to share them. I mean, you're talking about community, but I feel like there's just a great little sense of community that's formed up here on this stage in this time. And so thank you for bringing that gift to us and sharing it and helping us take it out into the world with us when we go.